That is solid.
What is going on, boys, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are getting the Subaru ready to go to the frickin' track again, and I am so hyped. If you guys did not catch the last track day video, I will put a link up top to that video. It was absolutely insane. My first time on a actual circuit racing track, I guess you could say. This time we're doing autocross and we're doing time attack. So this is gonna be sick. But first, we gotta get the car ready for the track again. I probably got about 3,000 kilometers on this oil change, so this oil needs to get changed. And if you guys just saw at the beginning of this video, I mounted a fire extinguisher in the car.
This fire extinguisher is by no means accessible to the driver whatsoever. I know it's supposed to be, but I'm waiting on a mount to come in off Amazon, and I don't want to drill holes in the body of the car if I don't need to until that mount comes in. So for now, we built this nice little custom mount, and she is not going anywhere.
I feel like whenever you're strapping something down, whether it's a dirt bike in the back of your truck or pretty much just securing anything, you always gotta say it's not going anywhere. Because if you don't, it's probably gonna fall off. I feel like that's just kind of an unwritten rule. Maybe that's just me. Let me know in the comments. You guys do that too?
So this bracket for this fire extinguisher is sweet. Got a quick pop disconnect right there. And then you just grab this little plastic tab, pop it off, and this fire extinguisher is locked and loaded, ready to put out some fires. This is a BC fire extinguisher, so it's good for liquids and electrical. And if you guys want to see how I mounted this, you can see it is sitting on the bracket for the spare tire. Now I used a M8 bolt on the back side and a M6 bolt on this side with a nut on the bottom side, so I didn't drill any holes. There's 2 holes in your spare tire piece with a hole for threads in the middle to actually mount the spare tire with this whole threaded piece, but we're not going to need a spare tire at the track, so we don't need that. I did have to drill new holes in the plastic mount that came with the fire extinguisher, but I think it worked pretty good.
One other thing I want to test out and see if this fits is if the actual cover fits over top of this without the spare tire. Oh my gosh. That was the most unintentionally successful mod I've ever done. Now we can still bring everything to the track, and then when we get there, just take it out, just in case we pop a tire or something on the way there. That's dope.
That is solid.
Now we got a fire extinguisher in the car. On to the next mod before we get to actually doing a full check over of the car for the track, because that's the point of this video.
You guys saw in the beginning of the video what these headlights looked like in this car, but I'm going to show you again anyways. The engine bay in this car is absolutely built to the tilt, and we are still rocking halogen headlights. By halogen, I mean the yellow ones, which are ugly and dumb. I don't know why I still have these in here.
So here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna pull the car outside of the shop. I'm gonna show you guys what these lights look like against the garage door in the dark. I had to wait until it was dark out to make this video because it's 10 o'clock at night right now. And then we are going to install these guys right here. They're a H7 LED bulb. These are for the low beams in the car, so we're still gonna have halogen high beams. But these low beams were sent out to us by Bossla Auto Lighting, and these things are packaged really nice, so I'm assuming they're gonna be super nice.
So let's check them out. We got a product manual, and we got our LED bulbs. Sick, I'm excited. We're gonna have LEDs in the Subaru finally.
Now, Bossla told me that these are a plug and play application, so we should be able to just pop the old halogen bulbs out, pop the LEDs in, and then we got LED lights.
Let's pull this thing outside so we can see how big of a difference these are actually gonna make. Kind of a bad angle because the shop light's on. Look at how dim those are. Those are ugly. And they just like, you can't really tell on camera, but in person, they just make the C lights on these headlights look so stupid. So we need to change that. So those are the halogen bulbs against the shop door. These are the halogen bulbs staring off into the distance. You can honestly barely see anything. These are not bright at all. And they look terrible. Look at this lighting. I mean, you can see, but I even see that cat sneak up on me. What you want, kitty? What? Don't put your booty in the camera.
Now I'm just gonna change these bulbs outside because this is literally gonna take 2 minutes. Simple yet effective.
Let's go. That looks way better. Now you can see the headlights finally match the C lights, which is dope. But here is one downside to this car still. The high beams are still halogen bulbs. Holy man, this is so hard to tell on camera, but that is so much brighter. Look at this shadow. This is bright as hell. And they look so good. You can't even pick this up on camera, dude. I'm gonna use the new headlights to light up this box. And give a huge thank you to Bossla Auto Lighting for sending these LED low beam headlights out. They also do have a set that has a switchback mode that goes yellow and LED, which those look sick. I might have to snag a set of those. But for now, I need a set of LED high beams first.
All right, back in the shop now, and now we can take care of the point of this video, which is track day prep. Now, we were just at the track last weekend, and I went through the whole car. I boost leak tested it. We just fixed the misfire on it. I coolant pressure tested it, made sure I had no coolant leaks. I checked the brakes, checked my tires, checked for leaks under the car. I checked absolutely everything. But we're gonna do it again so I can make a video for you guys. Other than the boost leak test, the coolant pressure test, or a compression test or leak down test, because if you guys want to do that stuff, I will put a link on the top of the screen to when we were diagnosing the misfire in this car. I show you guys how to do a boost leak test, and I show you guys how to do a compression test, and we did a bit of a leak down test as well in those videos. But what we are going to do is change the oil.
I always like going into track days with a fresh oil change. So we got our good old Motul 550 ester oil. That's what keeps this thing running so good. And this is not sponsored, by the way, by either company. I just like this Motul 550 because we have been beating the absolute wheels off this thing for over 20,000 kilometers now at 500 horsepower, and she's still kicking. Stock case halves, 11 mil head studs, stock head gaskets, stock heads, H-beam rods, and Manley pistons. That's it. And King Racing bearings. But that's not the point. She's still kicking.
I mean, it might still be running because I do like 2,000 kilometer oil changes on this thing because it's always at the track and it's sitting on the limiter all the time. But either way, it's still alive. Another thing I figured I'd mention to you guys, since I haven't really given you guys like a life update at all lately, the Corolla's gone. I only ever made one video on that car. We sold the Corolla. It was an unreal daily driver. I put 17,000 kilometers on that car and didn't really lose any money on it. So that's a positive. It's pretty much unheard of when you buy a brand new car. Second thing is, I bought a truck. And this truck is sick. It's got the good old 6-liter LS in it.
It's dark out, but we got a new tow rig to haul the Subaru and the Honda around. She's a 6-liter LS GMC 1500 HD. She's got the 4L80 transmission in her, and it's an absolute pig on fuel. But that's okay. I got it for a good deal. It's only got 150,000 kilometers on it, and it's a 2007. And the rockers aren't rusted out yet, so that's a positive too. I didn't feel like there was any point in making a full dedicated video on this. So for you OG subscribers that watch the channel all the time,
thank you for being you. You guys are awesome.
Last life update. If you guys didn't catch the last video, I'll put a link on the top of the screen. The turbo Honda's coming together, boys. We got all the intercooler piping mocked up. Sidewinder kit is like half mounted, but we're gonna get this thing fully mounted, get a first start on it, and then we're gonna pull it all apart, heat wrap everything, and get it all properly installed. And then she's going for a tune.
So make sure you guys are subscribing to the channel because that build is gonna be sick. Because who doesn't like a good sleeper Civic? It's probably gonna clap the cheeks of my Subaru, not gonna lie.
Bartender. About halfway up the dipstick, but we will check it again once we put it on the ground and give the oil some time to settle back down to the oil pan.
Now that we've changed the oil, minus topping it up a little bit, I checked the old oil, nice and golden brown, no metal shavings whatsoever in it, so she's still kicking, boys. Next thing we are gonna do, and I already did when I was under the car changing the oil, is go underneath the car and check for leaks, check for any broken suspension components, any bent suspension components. Just give the whole underside of the car a good once over.
First thing that I always like to do before we even hop underneath the car is to check the front end of the car. So you're checking your ball joints at the end of control arms, you're checking your control arms, you're checking your tie rod ends, your inner and outer for excessive play. You're checking to make sure all your suspension components are tight by doing this, and you're also checking your wheel bearings at the same time. So you're gonna grab the tire on each side and you're gonna give it a good shake side to side. I don't feel any play, that means my tie rods are tight. Now we're checking for wheel bearing. On a Subaru, since these are McPherson struts with coilovers, checking the top here is really just checking for play in your wheel bearing.
bearing. And then you can grab the bottom, pull it forward and backwards, and that is checking for play in that lower ball joint on that control arm. She's nice and tight. Now I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side, just so that I know she's nice and tight before we take the wheels off, which it is. Now at the back of the car, again, you can push in and out, check for those rear wheel bearings to see if they have any play. I can't rotate the tire forward or backwards because my e-brake engaged. We know my e-brake engages. And again, the same thing on the other side.
Now let's hop underneath the car, and you're gonna notice that the underside of my car is nice and gold and black, and everything is all fresh under here. I'll put a link at the top of the screen here to the video at Sublime Surfacing. They just coated the entire underside of this car, and it looks phenomenal under here, you guys. If you're in the Edmonton area, I highly suggest getting this done to your car. But underneath the car, especially for Subarus, a really common thing to look for is valve cover gasket leaks. Now, this car somehow over 20,000 kilometers of straight abuse at 500 horsepower, and another 30,000 kilometers before that, even more, I'd say about 40,000 kilometers of daily driving on this engine. There is not a single leak anywhere, because that's what happens when you follow service manuals and seal the valve covers properly the way they're supposed to. You use OEM gaskets everywhere. Everything just ends up working the way it's supposed to. So as you can see, we got no valve cover gasket leaks. We got no excessive heat or burn marks from the manifold. Oil pan's not leaking. We just changed the oil, so that should be good. Engine mounts aren't broken or anything. Those are tucked in there behind the exhaust manifold. You're checking for coolant leaks underneath the rad, checking all the coolant hoses like our lower rad hose right here. Check your power steering rack for any power steering leaks. Your AVCS solenoids, make sure those are leaking. You can literally check everything underneath the car. Here's the back where the turbo sits and the up pipe and everything, and the screamer pipe and down pipe, and I know that I got no leaks down here. Another thing that you should look at while you're under here is these control arm bushings, especially if you're going to the track. My control arm bushings honestly have over 200,000 kilometers on them, and they're starting to crack a little bit, but they still look pretty good. And there is another one on this portion, and it looks good too. Then another thing you can do, which I'm guilty of this is bad, your sway bar. I still have the stock sway bar bushings and links in this car. I can grab this whole sway bar and rock it side to side. These end links have play in them too, so I need sway bar links and bushings and a new sway bar in the front. Probably gonna put a thicker 24 mil sway bar or something like that in the front, but I'm not 100% sure yet. You guys leave me some suggestions in the comments because I am not sure what front sway bar I want to run. Now, here is a very important thing, and this gets looked over a lot when doing pre-track inspections. Check for transmission leaks while you're here, but up above your transmission and this axle right here, you will see a little shaft with two U-joints on it, and this is called your steering linkage. This steering linkage has two bolts on it. You want to make sure both of the bolts are tight. There's one at the top and one at the bottom, and you want to make sure that there's not a bunch of play in this by grabbing it and shaking it around. Mine's good. I just put a 2015 STI intermediate shaft in this thing, or steering linkage, whatever you want to call it, so I know it's good. But check that, because if that comes off or that breaks, you're going straight into a wall because you're losing all of your steering. So make sure that that is nice and tight and doesn't have a bunch of play in it. Next thing I do is check my CV joints on the axles. So I'll take the boots and just kind of peel the ribs with my fingers. Just look for any cracks or damage or anything. Make sure there's not grease. If there's no grease anywhere, then your boots are probably not torn. Do that on the inners and the outer boots. If your car's all-wheel drive, do it on all four axles. Then exhaust, you're gonna want to check for exhaust leaks, especially pre-oxygen sensor exhaust leaks, because those will make your car run lean, or rich, sorry, and you don't want that. Next thing that is a big one that a lot of people don't look at is checking the steady bearing and checking the U-joints on your drive shaft. You can also check all your shifter linkage while you're here. I just put shifter bushings in this car so I know mine's good and nice and tight. Here is the output shaft of your transmission. Now you can take a look at that, make sure the output shaft seal isn't leaking, which mine isn't. Then it's good to grab the U-joint of the front of the drive shaft and give it a good push up and down. Make sure there's not a whole bunch of play. It's totally normal to have a little bit, but if it's rocking back and forth like crazy, you got a problem and you need to replace that U-joint or replace your drive shaft. Next is the steady bearing, which in my case is sitting right there. It's usually the point midway through the drive shaft that mounts to the body of the car, and that has a bearing in it. And all you want to do with that is going to be hard to show on camera, but you take your hands, push up and down. It should move a little bit, but it shouldn't thunk. If it thunks, you need a new steady bearing. And then check all the U-joints on the drive shaft, just like I said how to do it on that front U-joint. Then give your exhaust a good whack. Make sure everything's nice and tight. Mine's rattly because there's a piece broken at the back. We're hopefully hopefully fixing that tomorrow. Now at the back of the car, again, obviously you want to check your sway bar. You can see this one's nice and tight. I got a pair in 22 mil rear sway bar with polyurethane end links and bushings, so that's solid. Coilovers are nice and solid. We just adjusted the ride height on these things. Control arms aren't bent or broken or anything on both sides. And while you're here, you can also check your control arm bushings. Make sure you don't visibly see any loose bolts on any of your trailing arms or rear tie rods or anything like that, or toe arms, I guess you should call them, not tie rods. Make sure your rear diff's not leaking. Check your rear axle boots in the rear as well. And one thing I noticed in this car is this diff bushing right here that supports the whole diff. The diff bushing on this one side is actually looking like she's blown out a little bit. So that'll be okay for another track day, but we're definitely gonna have to replace that soon. Maybe we'll get like a solid rear diff brace or something like that, like a Torque Solutions one or something. Now that we kind of covered everything underneath the car, the next thing I do is I give the whole engine bay a good once over. What I mean by a once over is you're just looking at all your fuel line connections and everything like that for any leaks. Look at your coolant lines, look at your oil lines, check your belt, make sure it's not ripped and it's got good tension on it. Make sure all of your fluids are completely topped up. It looks like my power steering fluid is actually at the hot minimum, so I'm gonna make sure I top that up a little bit. I'm actually not sure why that's low because we don't have any leaks and I haven't drained any of that, but I'll definitely top that up. And then the other thing that I strongly suggest, and I did it in a previous video like I said, is doing a boost leak test and spraying around with soapy water to check for any boost leaks or vacuum leaks or anything. Before you go to the track, when I talked about checking fluid levels, it is a very, very good idea to check your brake fluid. And if you haven't flushed it in a long time, flush your brake fluid out. My brake fluid, I flushed probably 5,000 kilometers ago or so. As you can see, she is nice and golden yellow, so we shouldn't have to touch that. Another thing to check, and this sounds stupid, but check your battery. If you guys have a load tester, load test your battery, make sure your battery is good, because a lot that happens in your car is run by modules. And what do modules need to run properly? They need proper voltage, and so that your modules can send the proper current flow to whatever they are running. So if your battery is not giving the proper voltage, your modules can't do their job, and everything isn't going to be operating at 100% capacity the way it should when you're on the track. When I load test batteries, I like to use my good old load tester from TopDon that I picked up, which as you guys can see, I just tested my battery and it actually failed. It says replace. It's only at 41% state of health, putting out 366 cold cranking amps. It's 32% charged at 12.19 volts. So I definitely need to charge this thing at the least, but I will probably pick up a new battery before the track day on Saturday. Which for you guys, as you're watching this video, is Saturday. And while you're watching this, I'm at the track banging gears in this car. So make sure you hit the subscribe button so you guys don't miss that video, because it's gonna be a banger. Next thing we're gonna do is take off the wheels so that we can check our brakes. This is probably one of the most important things, because we're gonna check our brakes and we're gonna check the condition of our tires with the wheels off. So first things first, checking our tires. You got wear bars on your tires in between the tread. As you can see on these tires, we are very, very far away from the wear bars. We have lots of tread on these tires. We were just at the track with these, so these tires are pretty scrubbed up. But what I like to do is take your hand and run it along the edge of your tire. You can feel if there's high and low points or if it's a nice smooth wear pattern. You'd also take a look and see that the inner portion of this tire is actually a little bit more worn out. As you can see on the outside, there's all these little dots, whereas on the inside, those little dots are gone. That's because I'm running negative 2.5 degrees of camber on this car. So once these start to wear down a little bit more on the inside, I'm gonna flip the tires on the wheels, because these are directional tires, so that we can get the most even wear out of these tires possible. Holy shit. This is why we do pre-track inspections, boys. We would have snapped an axle for sure. Oh my God. That just caught my eye. I can't believe I caught that. Tell me if you see it. It's insanely sketchy. I'll tell you that for free. Right here, there is a slot in the axle. What you do when you torque your axle bolt is you torque it and then you stake the axle nut. I've been calling it bolt and nut. It's a nut. You stake the axle nut into the axle to prevent the axle nut from backing out and rotating away. Now at the track, when you're driving these things super hard, you're launching the shit out of them, you're driving them right to the limiter on every single shift, it puts a lot of stress on the components in the car. And as you can see by exhibit A here, me launching this car consistently over and over and over again has caused this axle nut to actually back off. You can see that my original stake mark is right here. That's where I staked the axle nut. That's where the stake is supposed to be. So this axle nut has backed out about 45 degrees. So as part of our pre-track inspection, we're gonna get a torque wrench, get an axle nut socket on this, and we are gonna torque that axle nut socket up and restake it with a punch so that that thing doesn't back out. But while we're here, since we had a real hard track day, I'm gonna take a look at the brake pads. These brake pads still got lots of pad left on them. I'd say probably a good 6 mil left on the outside pad, and on the inside pad we also got about 6 mil. And I just serviced the pads and everything like that, so we're good to go there. So now that we found that, I was only gonna pull 2 wheels off here just to show you guys because I was confident that everything was good.
But this just goes to show why these pre-track inspections are so important. And everyone always asks why or how I never have failures at the track. I always drive my car to the track, beat the living piss out of it, drive it home every time. This is why. You go through the car, you check everything over, make sure everything is 100% solid. Obviously, sometimes you're gonna break stuff, like if you're launching the car, you hook up really hard, you can snap axles and stuff like that happens. But in this situation at the track, if that axle nut backs out, I'm snapping an axle, and I didn't snap the axle because the car makes too much power. Because I've launched the car a countless amount of times on these axles. I know they can take it. I would have snapped the axle because I didn't check something. The axle bolt backs out, axle slides out on the hub, there's not as many teeth grabbing, and the axle snaps. Well, not as many teeth, but not as much of the teeth are grabbing the hub, if that makes sense.
So I gotta look up the torque spec for that axle nut, but I'm gonna pull all 4 wheels off. We're gonna retorque that axle nut, and hopefully the axle nut is not loose on the passenger side. After further investigation, I realized that my axle nuts actually are torqued, they're just not staked. I went around with a big old torque wrench, checked the torque on all of them, and they're actually over torqued by about 20 foot-pounds, but that's okay. I went around with a hammer and a punch and restaked them though, because I don't like axle nuts not being staked, because that's how I tell if they are backed out or not.
I was a bit worried that we might have chewed some of the teeth off the axle, not gonna lie to you, but we didn't, and she continues to be full send Stacy. Is that what we're gonna call her? This car's name is Stacy. What do we call her? Come up with some fun names, because Stacy can take it all. That just sounds a little more sus than the axle nuts were. If you guys don't bring a tire pressure pump to the track, set your tire pressures before you go to the track. But for me personally, I bring a tire pressure pump to the track and I play with my tire pressures throughout the day, depending on the grip level and how the car's feeling. So I won't be setting tire pressures today, but let's get the wheels back on this thing and get her on the ground.
Let's go, boys. Everything is officially dialed in on the Subaru for the track.
But there's one last check that I like to do before we end this video, and that is to check for codes. Just give her a quick scan, check for codes in the ECU, make sure you don't have any problems hiding that are sitting as a pending code and haven't come up as a check engine light yet or anything like that. So I got this new TopDon RT Link 500 scan tool. I have the access port to scan the Subaru, but this is gonna work awesome for me in the Civic and for all my daily drivers like the truck and stuff like that when I got codes.
So just because this car is a Subaru, I have a cob access port. So if we go to troubleshooting here, we go to read codes, it is gonna scan for any codes in the ECU, and if you look at that, it says no codes were found. So we're looking like we're in good shape. Now, since we know Cobb is a good product, we know their stuff works, I'm gonna unplug the access port, and we are going to plug this TopDon scan tool in to see if this thing actually works. What are the options here? Review, setup, info, print, emission readiness, look up, diagnose. We're gonna go diagnose. Oh, it looks like it's scanning right away. Malfunction indicator lamp status off. DTC's in the CCU 0. Readiness completed 8. Readiness not completed 1. Unsupported 1. Okay, so let's go to read code. Looks like we got freeze frame data and a data stream. That's pretty good. This vehicle has no fault codes. All right, there we go. She works, boys. And it looks like it's got a little green light here. That means no DTCs. Yellow means there'd be a pending DTC, and red means a permanent. Let's see what this thing's got for data stream, actually. I'm curious just to see if this thing's actually any good. Oh, wow. Holy boys. We got intake air temp, RPM, vehicle speed, map sensor, mass airflow sensor, even though we don't have a mass airflow sensor in this car anymore. Wow, this thing's got everything. I like it. I always like nice tools, and this is a nice tool. For any of my other cars except for the Subaru, because on the Subaru, we got the access port.
You guys ever try to plug a scan tool in and you can't find the OBD port and you're just trying to plug it in and you can't get at it? Happens to me all the time. This is so cool. Here's the scan tool, here's the OBD port. There is a little button on this OBD port, and when you press it, it has a freaking light on it.
If I'm trying to find the OBD port, you can't see it, guess what? This thing's got a light on it. You can find it no problem. Where is it? It's right there, right where that's plugged in. That's crazy. What a neat idea to include with your scan tool.
Also, remember when I said let the oil settle? I have not touched the oil since we topped this up. It was at halfway up the dipstick. Now, after letting her sit, she's almost at the top. I'd say we need to top this thing up maybe 200 milliliters and she'll be perfect. That is perfect, boys.
Last thing I want to mention before I end this video, because this video is definitely long enough already. Coming soon, boys, is the first ever Something Cool official merch drop.
All of the items will be going live on the website for a 2-week time period. After that 2 weeks is over, they're going to be completely gone. You won't be able to get them again unless you're local in Canada and you come to any local shows next summer. So this first drop, once it's dropped, you're not going to be able to get it anymore. If you guys follow my Instagram, I will sneak peek a whole bunch of photos of the shirts and these hats, which are freaking sick. Nice little trucker hats with the Something Cool logo. We got decals. The windshield decals are going to be for sponsored drivers only.
So for those of you that messaged me when I put out the sponsorship ad for Something Cool and you guys got in on the list, I did let you guys know you're in. I know I haven't contacted you guys since, but that's because I've been in a huge rush. We're selling the Corolla and buying the truck. And other big news.
If you made it to the end of this video, you're a real one and you're probably an OG to this channel. So I'm going to tell you guys early, I bought a house. And all the content is going to be moving from this shop, which is at my parents' house, to my own house, in my own garage, and we have a car lift. So I'm so excited. Make sure you guys keep your eyes peeled for this Something Cool merch drop because this is the stuff that keeps this channel going. Without doing this type of stuff, there's no way I could be able to do any of this. And without you guys, I couldn't be able to do any of this. So thank you so much. That's going to be it for this video. I will catch you guys at the track. If you're watching this and it's Saturday right now, go look at my Instagram story. I will have a link to the live feed up for race day so you can see the live feed of all the times and the bracketing system and how I'm doing throughout the day. And then you'll have to wait until the video comes out for the whole recap of the entire day. So peace out, you guys. Thank you so much for watching. I will catch you at the track next video.